Hello and welcome everyone to our first PACE webinar, where we would like to introduce you all to the new PACE programme and to take you through our first antibacterial therapeutics funding call. My name is Dr. Bev Isherwood. I'm a PACE programme director and a strategy leader in infectious diseases at the Medicines Discovery Catapult in the UK. We're running this webinar today to coincide with our open call for proposals. So in today's webinar agenda, we will start with a brief background to an overview to PACE, and I'll shortly hand over to Dr. Clive Mason to provide this overview to you. Clive is Programme Director of PACE, but also a Director at LifeArc. Following that overview, I will hand over to Dr. Neil Jingles and Dr. Pete Coombs, who will provide you with an overview of the antibacterial funding call, the overview, the key features, also taking you through the process, the selection criteria, the resources available to you to help you complete your application. And we'll also share a little bit about what successful applicants might hope to receive from PACE in terms of support for their programmes. Following those presentations, we'll move to an interactive Q&A session where all of the speakers will join me in a panel alongside Dr. Tanya Taylor, also a scientific lead, alongside Dr. Neil Jingles and Dr. Pete Coombs for the PACE programme. And we'll also be joined by Dr. Phil Packer, who is the AMR and Vaccines Innovation Lead, Innovate UK, and a member of the PACE Programme Management Board. I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Clive Mason to provide you with an overview of PACE.
Good afternoon. My name is Clive Mason, and alongside Bev, I am a Programme Director for the new PACE initiative. I am also an employee of LifeArc. It is my pleasure to briefly set the scene and introduce the ambition and intent for the new PACE initiative. PACE is a new UK-based £30 million programme of funding and support to be deployed over 5 years. PACE will bring together the right funding, resources and partnerships to help innovators progress their early-stage antimicrobial drug and diagnostic projects with greater speed, support and confidence, giving the best AMR innovations the best chance of success. PACE is a collaboration between 3 leaders in the UK's health innovation and research community: LifeArc, Innovate UK, and the Medicines Discovery Catapult. PACE harnesses their unique expertise, catalysing and working with the global AMR community to accelerate the speed of innovation to mitigate the risk of AMR. As we know, AMR poses a real threat to healthcare systems globally, and it is well recognised that the pipeline of new antimicrobial agents to meet this threat is sparse and insufficient. Given the inherent attrition rates, we need more shots on goal to make sure that new viable and innovative products emerge at the end of the discovery and development process. Numerous reports and analyses identify that it is SMEs that are predominantly striving to fill the gap, and through innovative approaches, they aim to address the therapeutic and diagnostic challenges associated with AMR. The limited resources available to SMEs to execute on AMR projects is recognised as a challenge, and a number of very welcome push initiatives have already been established to support AMR product progression. This is now also coupled with increased attention to the so-called pull incentives that look to improve the commercial and reimbursement model for valuable new AMR products. Some of the funders and initiatives are shown on the scheme on the slide. However, we and others believe that there is a gap that exists in this landscape, and this is the gap that PACE is looking to address through wraparound support of early translational science to strengthen and progress early stage AMR assets. There are 3 main strategic pillars to this new PACE initiative. Firstly, strengthen the pipeline. We want to grow a pipeline of high quality antimicrobial drugs and associated diagnostics aligned with unmet needs. Secondly, enable preclinical translation. PACE will provide innovative researchers in academia and SMEs the funding, advice and support they need to build de-risked and investment-ready assets. Thirdly, accelerate progress and overcome barriers. We aim to convene collaborative networks to identify and reduce barriers to innovation, advance programs, and drive new collaborative R&D. Through these mechanisms, we want to further embrace innovation and maximize the diversity in the approaches that look to meet the threat posed by AMR. Antimicrobial therapeutics and diagnostics are changing, and we need to make sure that that shift is imprinted on projects within the PACE initiative. We are moving to an era where therapeutics will be more selective and potentially exquisitely targeted to a particular pathogen. And this realization means that diagnostic tools play an increasingly important role. Non-traditional approaches are also increasingly represented in the preclinical pipeline, and PACE will look to embrace and support this diversity of approach. We will guide and support PACE awardees to align their AMR assets with the right progression pathway and translational roadmap, and ensure supporting data packages are appropriately targeted and strengthened. Through the PACE initiative, we will provide wraparound support for AMR products and their developers, going beyond a simple funding model. We aim to deepen and strengthen the data packages for AMR assets and work alongside product developers to identify the best partners to plug gaps in resources or capabilities. The intent is to robustly move assets forward to a position that improves the potential for future onward progression and investment. The AMR research community is small, and we want to ensure stakeholders are joined up and aware of each other and their capabilities. We want to ensure we apply best practice and apply lessons learned. This will bring increased opportunities for collaboration across the AMR ecosystem and identify additional stakeholders that can contribute, shape projects, and address barriers. Where appropriate, we also look to establish and offer enabling capabilities that have the potential to deliver cross-project impact. The aim and aspiration of PACE is to fully enable early translational science onto innovative AMR assets, achieving this through funding, but importantly also through additional wraparound support that maximizes the potential of the asset and improves the likelihood for further onward progression and investment. The AMR clock is ticking, and the pipeline of AMR-focused products desperately needs to be strengthened. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Clive, for that introduction to PACE. I can already see some questions coming in on the Q&A box. Please do keep doing that. I will now hand over to Neil and Pete to share with you more detail about our Open Antibacterials funding call. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Neil Jingles, a member of the PACE team with a background in antimicrobial drug discovery. Today, I will provide you with an overview and key features of the first PACE funding call. The purpose of our 2023 Antibacterial Therapeutics funding call is to create and advance an exciting and diverse pipeline of new antibacterial treatments for the most threatening microbes and resistance mechanisms. The number of projects funded will depend on the quality and stage of the proposals, but the intent is to have selected from up to 8 to 12 projects to fund and support by mid to late 2024. The overall fund value of £10 million will provide non-dilutive funding awards of up to £1 million per project. The main aim of the programme is to provide participants with not only funding, but support to secure the delivery of key data aligned with onward drug development and further investment. With this in mind, the portfolio of projects selected in the programme will be actively managed, and projects will have clear milestones and respective deliverables, and will receive drug discovery advice and project management input from the PACE team to help successful delivery. So what projects are we looking for? Our focus is for projects directed at drug-resistant pathogens in indications of highest unmet need and burden, as highlighted by the WHO priority lists in the 2022 Lancet paper. We are looking for projects that are transformational, with the aim to fill a gap for innovative and differentiated antimicrobials in the clinical pipeline. With this in mind, the top priorities for this call are novel therapeutics to gram-negative pathogens which cause the highest burden, namely Enterobacteriaceae, and this would be prioritizing E. coli and Klebsiella pneumoniae. And we will include Acidobacter baumannii and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Gram-positives such as Staph aureus in particular are still a leading cause of infection, and as such, oral therapeutics with activity directed towards drug-resistant organisms would be eligible in this funding call. We will prioritise projects aligned to hard-to-treat infections covering respiratory tract, bloodstream, intra-abdominal, or urinary tract infections. Broad and narrow spectrum approaches are in scope, and we encourage targeted approaches with due consideration to the potential diagnostic requirements. Overall, our criteria are aligned with those of potential follow-on funders, paving the route from the bench to patient impact. What we were looking for the funding call scope criteria is outlined in this slide as an overview. The funding program is aimed at early stage drug development, and projects that are in hit validation stage, hit to lead, lead optimization, candidate selection, and early preclinical are all in scope, or the equivalent stage in another modality such as biologics. We are looking for novel targets or novel chemical classes, and these can be aligned, including but not limited to the following mechanisms, such as direct-acting and non-direct-acting antimicrobials, antivirulence approaches, etc. We are agnostic of the therapeutic modality that can enter the program, which can include, but not necessarily limited to, small molecules and biologics, such as antibodies, peptide, CRISPR approaches, and phage projects. We encourage you to talk to us if you think there is a clear rationale for your project to be in scope. Further details of ways to contact us will be covered later in the webinar. I've run through what's in scope and now what's out of scope for this funding call. We are not looking for projects or supporting proposals aligned with purely target and hit identification, such as in silico or lab-based screening approaches to generate novel targeted hits alone. Any projects in this early phase without clear targets and within hit validation will not be eligible for this funding program. At the other end of the spectrum, we are not supporting proposals that are entering investigational new drug or IND enabling studies, such as GLP toxicity studies. Also out of scope are any clinical studies such as first time in human and beyond. In the current funding call, vaccines are not included and are out of scope. We're also not looking for projects aligned with infections caused by mycobacteria, and this includes TB infections, fungal and gram-positive pathogens other than Staph aureus or out of scope. Out of scope for Staph aureus therapeutics are projects with non-oral based formulations or any projects with formulations focused on skin or prosthetic joint infections. Finally, please note we are not supporting projects that are not directly focused on antimicrobial development. These would include proposals related to developing or validating diagnostics and biomarkers and delivery methods alone. As I discussed in the last slide, please reach out to us if you're unsure or think there is a clear rationale for your project to be in scope. So just to outline the key eligibility for the funding call, we welcome applicants globally, and this can be academics or researchers from SMEs worldwide. This could involve consortium, but of note, large pharma partners would be permitted, but must cover their own costs. The application should come from a single lead applicant, and you can have co-applicants, but this is not a requirement of this funding call. The project itself should be planned to last up to a maximum of 2 years in length, and will be required to be milestone driven with a clear go, no-go progression criteria defined and agreed before the start of the project. The funding of this call covers direct project costs up to £1 million in British sterling, and I will come back to discuss further detail about eligible costs in a brief summary of the terms and conditions in later slides. So as I highlighted earlier, our intention is not just to fund, but to add additional wraparound support to enable the best chances of project success and to track further investment following completing the program. The specific requirements will be bespoke and tailored depending on the needs of the applicant and the project, but the intention is to provide support in the form of support through the application process, such as the one-to-one discussions we'll have, the Catalyzer workshop, drug discovery and disease area insight, advice and mentorship from the PACE team, providing access to collaborative network of potential project delivery partners, to facilitate and support project delivery where applicable, to convene and facilitate SABs and public and patient engagement panels, and to help with business support, such as orientation to potential downstream funders after the programme. You can find out more on our website about PACE and the type of support we can offer. We encourage you to discuss your application with us, where we can provide further information. So I've taken you through what PACE will offer. For innovators really to maximise impact and to reach their potential, it is essential that funded recipients and the PACE team work closely together. Therefore, we've outlined the following expectations of applicants and funded recipients. And really to be engaged in the process and work collaboratively with the PACE team in all aspects of the project development and life cycle if successful. We expect that each applicant, if successful following the EOI, will attend or send a delegate to the Catalyzer workshop, which will be virtual. Successfully funded projects to start within 3 months of the receipt of reward letter and to be committed to the project length specified. Each applicant should ensure legal and ethical requirements are followed, for example, to conduct the project in accordance with the terms of the award agreement. And we expect the applicant should highlight and raise any issues or concerns in a timely manner throughout the process and life cycle of the project. So I've outlined the key facts of the first funding call of PACE. I will end my presentation with a summary of the key terms and conditions of the funding programme. Please visit our website for the full details and access to the detailed document. And you can do this by using the link to our website below. Of note around intellectual property ownership of results and revenue share, the funding offer is non-dilutive, and any background IP or otherwise, including arising IP during the project lifecycle, will remain with the recipient. There will also be no revenue share clauses, such as revenue share options at successful commercialization. Regards a summary of funding, awards will cover 100% of direct eligible costs, up to £1 million limit with permitted expenditure. Permitted expenditure is defined as expenditure which has reasonably occurred or properly evidenced and is directly related to necessary for the delivery of the project. Typically, this will cover an appropriate percentage of FTE of staff, plus consumables directly related to the funded work, access to specialist equipment and reagents, contract research organisation work, and reasonable travel and subsistence expenses. Receiving funding during the project journey will be linked to achieving agreed milestones, and standard payments will be quarterly in arrears. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll hand over to the next presentation.
Hello, I'm Pete Coombs, a member of the PACE team and Scientific Director at LifeArc. So today I'm going to follow from Neil's presentation to outline some further details around the full application process and project selection criteria before we move on to a Q&A session. It's a high-level overview of the whole call process. From the launch of the PACE programme on the 19th of October, the expression of interest for this funding call is open for applications by completing the online form, which I'll talk about in my next slide. Applicants will have the option of booking a call with a scientific lead from the PACE team prior to submission of the EOI to discuss their application. The deadline for EOI submission is midnight on the 24th of November. At this point, applications will be triaged by an internal panel made up of scientists and representatives from partner organisations, so LifeArc, MDC and Innovate UK, with the aim of selecting the top proposals to progress to the full application stage. Successful applicants will then be notified and invited to attend an online Catalyzer workshop, due to be held around the beginning of February. At this point, a member of the PACE team will be assigned to provide guidance throughout the application process, with the deadline set for submission of the full application on the 28th of March 2024. Full applications will be comprehensively reviewed over the April to June period, which will involve further due diligence by the PACE team and review by external experts. We will be looking to offer funding to 8 to 12 projects and notify successful applicants in June. We will then move to contracts, finalising the project plans and budget and resource requirements. All being well, we should be in a position to launch the projects in the latter half of 2024. There will be an expectation that from receipt of award letters, projects should start within 3 months. I should also say that applicants who are unsuccessful at any stage of the process will be given feedback and recommendations. So a little more on the EOI form. It's a relatively short online form requesting non-confidential information. Of course, any information that is provided will be treated sensitively. However, applicants should be aware that we will not be under an official CDA at this point. The online form will provide further guidance for each section, and certain questions are limited to a maximum word count. As shown, the sections are as follows. So applicant details, application summary, project summary, alignment to clinical need, and a section focusing on the novelty of the approach, scientific rationale and research plan, which should include key research objectives, milestones, and deliverables. Further sections covering expertise to deliver the project plan, any gaps in current resources or capabilities that PACE could advise on or support to improve the impact of the project. Amount of funding required, a translational plan of how this project will be taken forward if successful, and a section covering IP considerations. Of note, the EOI form on the submission platform can be saved in draft before submitting your final copy and can be shared with co-applicants once you've registered and logged on. In order for your project to be considered for the funding call, including follow-up invitation to full application, it is essential that an online EOI is submitted by midnight on the 24th of November. Of course, we'd recommend submitting well in advance of this deadline in case of any unforeseen IT issues. So an essential part of progressing any drug discovery project is a target product profile to articulate the target indication use of drug profile. Applicants are asked to give appropriate considerations to key drug characteristics, what you are targeting, patient population, scope of the treatment, route of administration, safety profile, and value proposition in order to achieve patient impact and fulfill a clinical need. Applicants are expected to clearly articulate this as part of their proposal. Priority will be given to solutions for indications associated with the highest burden diseases associated with AMR impacting MDR pathogens, as detailed in the scope. We would expect at the EOI stage, this would be a high-level outline of a TPP as part of the unmet needs section, which can be expanded in detail in the full application. For guidance, there are some excellent TPPs that have been developed by the WHO, CARB-X, and the CFAMR syndicate, which could be used for guidance or direct alignment. In order for a proposal to be successful, it will need to address multiple key criteria, which it will be evaluated against as part of the triage process. These criteria will be available for reference. To take you through these briefly. The first key criteria is around novelty. We're looking for therapeutics that have a novel mechanism of action, target, or chemical class, with no cross-resistance with established antibiotics that meet the scope of the funding call, as outlined earlier by me. The scientific rationale must be based on evidence linking the desired antimicrobial phenotype and relevant pathogens aligned with the core scope, ideally showing activity in drug-resistant strains. We will also be looking for key supporting evidence or rationale for a low propensity of resistance, target engagement, and toxicity, as well as an appropriate screening cascade and activities for the stage of the project. In terms of the project plan, as well as a credible plan and budget, as already mentioned, clear milestones need to be set. Consideration of what the next steps would be to take forward the project following successful completion of part of the funding award. There are key criteria around what capabilities and resources are brought by the applicants and are needed to deliver the project, in consideration of the route to patient impact, aligning to a defined unmet need, credible path to approval, and a relevant aligned target product profile, as outlined on the previous slide. Lastly, IP and freedom to operate considerations are also part of the key criteria. So I've outlined the main EOI form and encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions, either now in the chat if you're viewing this live or after the webinar. I just wanted to highlight a few terms used in the context of the project plan section to make it clear what we're asking for. So we'd like to see clear objectives describing the research endpoints that will be delivered by the end of the project, quantifiable deliverables that arise from the project. Defined work packages, meaning specific strands of work within the project plan with their own defined deliverables, and clear milestones, so clear ties to the project plan aligning to critical go, no-go points based on the results generated up until that point. Critical evaluation of that and defined success criteria, which will be discussed and agreed with the PACE team prior to the event. So now I'd like to cover the stage entry guidance criteria in relation to the projects we're looking to support. As you've heard, we're looking to support projects at the early stages of hit validation, hit to lead, and lead optimization. And the table here gives an idea of the minimum entry requirements for the hit validation stage on the left, and the kind of typical activities we would like to expect to see in the hit to lead and lead optimizations stages in the center and right-hand columns. These criteria are very much based on similar criteria set out by our friends at CARB-X, and I would encourage you to look at these to guide whether your project is eligible, where it currently sits, and also the kinds of activities and considerations to be looking at in your project plans. I'm not going to go through the whole table now, but I just wanted to draw your attention to the left-hand side and the minimum entry requirements, with the key being experimental demonstration of a cell-based mechanism of action in a relevant target bacterial species, and that this is reproducible with fresh material and has a route to be progressed in assays to support it. And just to reiterate, we will not be funding screening or target or hit ID activities as part of this call. So hopefully we've given you a good overview of this funding call, which we believe was a really exciting opportunity to collaborate on innovative drug discovery projects targeting AMR. If you're interested in submitting an application, please visit our website using the QR code, where you'll find useful resources such as FAQs, project award agreements, and T's and C's, as well as recording of this webinar. There will also be the option to book a call with a scientific lead from the PACE team prior to submitting your application. The deadline for EOI submission is midnight on the Friday the 24th of November, and it is a requirement that all applicants who wish to be considered for the funding call must submit their online EOI. So this concludes the presentation. I'll now hand over to Bev, who will open up the session for Q&As.
Many thanks, Neil and Pete, for that overview of our open funding call. And I'm now joined by the panel, the PACE panel. Hopefully you can see us all. I can see a lot of questions have already been posted already, so many thanks for that. If there are any more, please do continue to post them. So I think we'll head straight to questions. There's quite a few come in that are around general PACE programme questions around, will there be multiple funding calls? Are there likely to be future funding calls focused on diagnostics? So I guess I maybe head to you, Phil, first for this. Our first call is antibacterial therapeutics, but would you like to say a bit more about the future of PACE?
Yes, I would. Thanks very much. So yeah, the simple answer is yes, we will be looking at diagnostics in the future. I think we are increasingly in an area where we are moving towards therapeutics which are specific and might target particular pathogens, and therefore we really do need to have diagnostics tools to increase our ability. It's particularly important in AMR, as we all know. Increasing use of antibiotics when they're not needed just makes the problem worse. So as PACE at the moment, we are doing a lot of work engaging with the sector to understand the pressing needs in this area in diagnostics, and we will then use this to inform a future call. And we will define this call accordingly, and will particularly be based on unmet need, patient requirements, and the consideration from the wider stakeholders within this area.
Thanks, Phil, for that. We also have a number of questions coming in around the types of projects that are in scope. There's one here that is around someone has a compound from a repurposing screen. Would this be in scope? I don't know, Clive, whether you'd like to take a stab at that one.
Yeah, I can have a go at that. Bev, thanks. So I think it really depends on the novelty of approach for this repurposing. If it was purely, I don't know, expansion or broadening of the profile or use of an existing antibiotic, then that would likely be out of scope. Whereas if it was a repurposing based on a drug from another therapeutic area that was looking to exploit antimicrobial activity, then that would likely be in scope for this call.
Thanks, Clive. And a couple of just quick follow-ons to that. We've had some other kind of questions about specific projects. So people asking about immune directed, non-directed projects, adjuvant-based projects. Don't know whether you want to just quickly comment on both of those examples. Sorry, was that for me, Bev? Yeah, feel free. Otherwise, Pete maybe chip in. Yeah, I think I didn't catch all of that, but I think from what I heard, then broadly, yes, those would be in scope. Great, thanks. And then we have some questions coming in here more around the investigators and the applicants. So can investigators and applicants be on multiple applications is one question we've had in. Tanya, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. Thank you, Bev. So yes, you can, so long as the projects that you're submitting are differentiated from one another and are not directly related to one another, you can submit multiple applications to this funding call, and we've considered that.
Great, thanks. And I think there's a couple of other questions related to eligibility. I think some of this we have covered in the slides, but there's a couple of questions here I can see about whether applications are welcome from globally. Maybe Tanya, you could take.
Yeah, this is a global funding call, so we'll consider applications from anywhere within the world. Likewise, co-applicants can be listed on the application as well.
Thanks. And there's a question here around university spin-outs and their eligibility, and yes, they would be eligible. I don't see any other questions that are related to those eligibility for applications at the moment, but we will get back to you if we miss any. There's quite a few questions coming around budget, and I guess one to start off with, are there budget caps for the different stages of development? Neil, I wonder if you wouldn't mind taking that one.
Yeah, thanks, Bev. The simple answer is really no. I mean, the overall maximum funding award is up to £1 million, as we said, and it's not limited to particular stages. So really, is looking at what the requirements are during each stage and what the project requirements are and what the requested funds, and is that adequate to support that stage in terms of the research plan. And again, from a sort of looking at that plan, does that reflect their value of money? You know, that they represents good value of money and really supports the addressing the elements of the work plan and contributing really to the success of the project. So that answers that.
Great. Thanks very much, Neil. And another kind of one related to budget and eligibility. So there's questions around what expenses would be covered, what percentage of costs will be covered, are salary costs eligible? Pete, would you mind taking that one?
Sure. So I think Neil's covered some of this in the slides, but just to kind of reiterate, so the awards cover 100% direct costs of the recipient kind of project, and provided such costs are committed expenditure. So it's really about reasonably incurred costs, providing properly evidenced that are related to or necessary for the delivery of the project. So in accordance with the project plan and the budget, it does need to comply with subsidy law in the case of UK enterprise. So I think you can look at our T's and C's on the website for kind of more details on that. The kind of examples of committed expenditure very much kind of percentage of FTE for staff, postdocs, etc., plus consumables and that are directly related to the funded work, but also access to specialist equipment or reagents, CRO work, things like that. So yeah, have a look at the T's and C's for kind of more details on that.
Thank you, Pete. I guess also related to T's and C's, we've had a question here about IP. So who will own the IP generated in a funded project? There is a follow-on related question to this, I guess, which is about, do I need to have patents in place before applying? Tanya, could I ask you to tackle this one? Thank you.
Yes, sure. So the IP should reside with the recipient of the fund. That means that if you're outsourcing any work, you need to make sure that any novel IP arising from that will reside with you. You do not need to have patents in place necessarily. That depends entirely on the stage of development that you're at, and we will support and evaluate that as well. We will. You should ensure that you have freedom to operate. So you should have access to any necessary background IP to continue the project plan. And we will evaluate that as part of the review process.
Great, thank you, Tanya. And then there are also a few questions coming in around the process, and specifically this currently open expressions of interest phase. So someone has asked if we can describe a little bit more about what we might expect on a pre-EOI phone call. And a kind of follow on to that is a question, is a TPP needed for the EOI submission? I wonder, Neil, whether you might take this one for us.
Yeah, thanks, Bev. So really the one-to-ones, and this will be opened up for available bookings from tomorrow onwards, is really an opportunity for you guys or applicants to really discuss any projects. Obviously, it'll be non-confidential stuff, and to be able to answer specific questions around project things itself. That's really the opportunity of those one-to-ones. So if you have a particular question around your project that you would like answered by the team, there's an opportunity to do that if that answers that. And then in terms of the TPP, the requirement really is to think about in terms of going into a full application, but really developing that TPP, but just looking at what's available out there, and then adding that to your sort of EOI application where you can. That helps.
Thanks very much, Neil. There is I'm now jumping around a bit as new questions come in. So there's a question here again about eligibility and the definition of an SME for this particular funding call. I think we do have this available on our FAQ site already, but I don't know if anyone from the panel wants to just quickly summarize that one.
Yeah, I can take that. So it's not just SMEs that are eligible, academics likewise and other organizations can apply. The definition of the SME is, as you said, on our FAQs, and it's defined by the size of the organization, income, and number of employees. So you can all find that information on our website.
Thanks, Tanya. And then there's a question around whether the PACE team might identify opportunities for consortia by merging applications once they come in, or whether collaborative teams must be formed upfront at the moment of submission. There's also questions about the role of CROs as part of the applications, whether they need to be in place upfront or whether they can be brought on board afterwards. So yeah, it's very much the ethos of PACE to help work collaboratively to develop those project proposals. So I don't know whether anyone on the panel would like to elaborate just a little bit more about how we see that working through the EOI phase and the full application phase.
I can take a stab. I think the collaborative approach, I think it is interesting, and it's probably something we want to foster as much as possible in this space. But I suspect in the context of the EOIs, we probably won't be best placed to be able to identify who to match with who within that process. So I think if those collaborative approaches can be pre-formed ahead of the EOI, I think that would be the most efficient way to build those.
Thanks very much, Clive. I think we're doing quite well addressing these questions. There are a few specifics, again, about the types of projects that are funded and the phase of those projects. So whether solely enabling studies would be in scope, and whether combinations could be in scope, and what level of in vivo data is required, and whether GLP tox is something that would be funded through PACE. I think we do have quite a lot of that information on our FAQs and in the slides, but if any of the panel want to add anything at this stage, feel free.
Yeah, Bev, thanks for that. Yeah, as I just sort of highlighted in my presentation, really sitting with that preclinical phase in terms of projects. So yeah, we wouldn't be supporting IND enabling studies or GLP tox, obviously depending on terms of If there's exploratory talks a bit earlier in terms of lead up, then obviously that would be supported. But in terms of anything clinically or clinically related, in terms of putting together documentation or anything related wouldn't be in scope, if that helps.
Great, many thanks, Neil. I think we're doing pretty well at addressing the questions. I'll apologise now if I've missed any. I think there is maybe one final one that would be useful for us just to talk about. Someone has asked the question whether PACE is intended to be a long-term thing. Is there potential for future calls on the same or diverse things in the future? Phil, I know we talked a little bit right at the start about future calls.
Yes, our long-term aspiration is that we would like to have something that for the UK, which would be a long-term arrangement. Obviously, that will depend on funding, and we will be looking to expand what we're doing now long-term, and therefore there will be 3 calls probably in this version of PACE, and hopefully we will then continue and in the future and have different calls. But yeah, to the answer to that is yes, we are aiming for this not to be just one-off opportunity. It hopefully will be longer, and we will hope to perhaps bring further investors in the future.
Great, many thanks, Phil and the panel. I think we have addressed all the questions that I've seen coming in. There may be some things I've missed. As I mentioned, we will make this recording available to all via the website. We will also update our Q&A FAQ document on the website, and if necessary, we can reply to these questions one-to-one. The one-to-one booking portal is open, or will be open very soon, for anyone who would like a one-to-one follow-up discussion. The general contacts page is up on the PACE website, so please do get in touch with follow-on questions, queries. Any other housekeeping from me? I think just to say that our expressions of interest portal is open now. We're really excited and really looking forward to receiving your applications and to talking with you over the coming weeks. It will be open until the 24th of November. So yeah, I think it just remains really for me to thank everybody today, the speakers, the panel, and also to thank all of you for joining us. And we look forward to talking more very soon. Thank you.